Hi, Katiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Tuesday afternoon. Hopefully, this live stream is going. Gave me a little error there, but it looks like it's running right now. So, hopefully, those of you that are out there can hear what's going on. This is Let's Talk Tropics on a Tuesday. It's August the 19th. We've got a hurricane out there, and we've got two tropical waves that we're watching. A couple of them looking kind of interesting. Models have changed up quite a bit since yesterday from what some of the final solutions were with these couple of waves that are out in the Atlantic. We're going to see a whole bunch of changes here over the next couple of weeks or so. So at this point, even though we've got a couple of big waves out there and some of the models have been somewhat interesting on the solutions, and a lot of folks have been sharing that stuff on social media, so far, these are not the final solutions. We're going to see a lot of changes there. So I wouldn't get too concerned about the waves that are out there right now, but as always, we are heading to the peak of the hurricane season, and this is the time that you do need to be the most prepared. We've got a lot of sunshine, just a few clouds mixing in. Temperatures running around 89, that dew point at 74, so with that high humidity, it makes it feel more like 98. Winds are light out of the north-northeast at 3, and the pressure's at 30.01 so far. Most of the showers and thunderstorms have stayed in the offshore waters. Probably see a few more popping up today. I don't think we'll see quite the coverage that we saw out there yesterday. And then tomorrow, I think, is also going to be a little drier than what we saw yesterday. But as we go into Thursday and Friday, as Hurricane Erin makes its way northward, it's going to try to pull a little bit of a trough farther south, and that might help to increase our chances for rain for Thursday and Friday. So looking outside here in Lafayette, pretty nice afternoon. Temperatures right now are running in the upper 80s to right around 90 degrees, and traveling is okay right now. In fact, we're looking at partly to mostly sunny skies just about everywhere you go, including areas up north, up toward Opelousas and Alexandria this time around. Not a bad day. There's Hurricane Erin, so that's one of the big features that we've got on the map right now. We still got more of a ridge of high pressure aloft. I know that didn't really help us out a whole lot yesterday, where we had the widespread showers and thunderstorms, even a few severe thunderstorms that moved across with some small hail. But as Erin moves its way a little bit farther off toward the north here and eventually curves its way back out to sea, that's going to help to drag a frontal boundary or a trough farther toward the south. I think the bulk of the dry air is going to be moving over toward the southeast, but we might get a little bit of a taste of that as we head into the weekend. So maybe perhaps some lower humidity. That would be nice. Check it out. We've got some pretty beach cameras here today over toward Panama City. We've got a little more cloud cover there, some billowing clouds off in the distance as we look eastward from Orange Beach. Looking southward from Dauphin Island, you see a few clouds out there over the offshore waters, and in Galveston, not a bad day today. With partly to mostly sunny skies, you can see some of the bigger thunderstorms that are out there in the offshore waters this time around. Good morning, or good afternoon, rather, Robert. Glad to have you here this afternoon. Looking at the Gulf waters, again, that passing wave that brought us the showers and thunderstorms, still bringing some clouds over southeast Texas, but the rest of the northern Gulf Coast is in good shape. Really, the entire Gulf looking pretty nice today with some fair skies and some light winds out there. And as far as our waves and our winds out there, generally north now, but we're going to see the wind shifting more southerly later in the day. Seas about 1 to 2 feet. So a pretty good day for boating, unless you're on the Atlantic side. Of course, you can see exactly where Erin is and the problems that that is causing. So there's your tropical weather outlook. Again, we still have Erin. That right now looks like the core is going to continue to stay away from land, and we're going to be seeing indirect effects on the Bahamas, the East Coast, and over toward, let's say, Bermuda coming up down the road. And then we have that wave that kind of rolled off the African coast, moving at a pretty good clip westward across the Atlantic. That's the orange X, and in a couple of days, it might have a better chance for development, perhaps there as it gets north of the Leeward Islands and over toward Puerto Rico. But I will say the models have really backed off on this compared to yesterday. And then the newest entry, which is the X that's right off the African coast, that's actually got a designation as a disturbance already. I really thought the orange X in the middle part of the Atlantic would get that 99L, but it looks like they're going to go ahead and give it to the folks, or give it to the disturbance rather, that's right there off the African coast. That one still is looking somewhat interesting in the models, but it kind of comes and goes and comes and goes. So we're going to discuss the fact that even though we've got these two tropical waves out there, we've just got so many model solutions that it's really hard to pinpoint anything just yet. But over the next several days, I think we'll get some more agreement in the different computer models, and hopefully we'll be able to give you a better idea of what's going to happen here over the next couple of weeks. So let's just go ahead and start out with Central America. It is a pretty day there from the Yucatan all the way down to Panama. A little bit of shower activity in Panama, and then you've got a little wave that's rolling off the Nicaraguan and the Costa Rican or the El Salvadorian coastline there in the Pacific. That's going to move off toward the west, and more likely we'll have some action there on the Pacific side. And then, of course, you've got Hurricane Erin that's passing by the Bahamas. Again, indirect effects there, but most of the Caribbean seeing some high, thin clouds associated with the blow off from some of Hurricane Erin, but really not a whole lot going on in the Caribbean. We've got a weak tropical wave that's passing through the islands right now. But that's not going to cause too many problems other than some showers. So we'll focus a little bit here on Hurricane Erin as it's slowed down considerably. It's also being affected by a lot more shear on its northwestern side. So the core got exposed overnight last night. And the intensity of this has kind of dropped off. Remember, yesterday it was a pretty solid category 4, and then it worked its way down to a category 3 this morning, and now it's down to a category 2 with winds at 105 miles per hour, 25.6 north, 72.4 west. Winds are at 105, again, 961 on the pressure. You can see all that information there on the left side of your screen. All the computer models are pretty much lined up on top of each other. Good news here, it looks like the core of the hurricane will continue to stay off of land. That includes the East Coast and Bermuda, too. But we do have tropical storm watches that are posted for the Outer Banks of North Carolina, as the indirect effects are going to cause some coastal flooding and perhaps getting some wind speeds getting up as high as tropical storm force. But the intensity models for Erin pretty much hold it as a Cat 1, Cat 2 here over the next several days. And as you get about 3 or 4 days out and you start getting affected by the westerlies and some of the colder waters, once it rounds north of Bermuda, we'll quickly see the intensity going down. So likely we're going to be seeing that Erin is probably already peaked out at its max intensity. That was when it was a category 5, but it still maintained category 4 there for a while, and it's going to weaken considerably as it moves off toward the east. So we've got a couple of other areas that I want to point out. And one is out there in the middle part of the Atlantic. That's one that we were looking at yesterday and still has a medium chance for development. It is still considered just a tropical wave. The next disturbance that's come off the African coast has got the 99L designation. So we got a little more information and some computer model runs on that. And then there's yet another wave that's going to be working off the African coast. And this is the time of the year that you see these pretty consistently coming off of Africa and rolling into the Atlantic Ocean. So let's kind of focus our attention more on 99L. And the reason I'm going to focus more on this one rather than the one that's in the middle part of the Atlantic is because the computer models are really starting to back off on any development of that one. So we're going to focus on the one that might have a little more oomph over the next couple of days. But disturbance 99L's got a nice rotation, low pressure area south of the Cape Verde Islands, and all of the computer models are indicating a westward track, fairly quick too. Moving off toward the west, it could be approaching the Leeward Islands in about 5 days or so. So that would bring us into the early part of the weekend. As far as the intensity, it does bring it up to a tropical storm over the next 3 or 4 days. And then maybe some of the models getting up to hurricane beyond 5. But again, there's been so much disagreement on how strong this would be or where it's going to go or even how long it's going to hold on. So when we look at even the ensemble model side for the Euro, really, it just doesn't pick up on anything. You don't see a whole lot of lines. You got a little squiggly there, right there by the Cape Verde Islands, but then it just kind of disappears. But the GFS has a little bit more there. The GFS seems to be biting a little bit harder on this particular one. So we do have some model runs. One of the what ifs does tend to move it more toward the northwest and kind of rounding that big ridge of high pressure that's going to stay over the Atlantic. That ridge is probably going to be holding right about over in this area here for most of next week. So anything that goes out there might have more of a chance of making that turn over the middle part of the Atlantic, which would obviously be good news. But you can see that anything that comes out here has a much better chance of getting into some of these higher wind speeds, perhaps up to a hurricane, while everything with all these what if shots that we have over here, most of them just keep it down as a tropical depression or even a weak tropical storm, maybe a little bit of a solution here that brings it up to a strong tropical storm. But at least the GFS ensembles are showing some organization, but not anything that's really intense. So that is good news. So let's go through the deterministic models. And again, different that we look at here. This is one model that's run over and over and over and over and over again, but it's tweaked a little bit because we know there are going to be changes. So this not only gives us what the main track, the GFS, is thinking, but it also gives us several what ifs. So this is more of what we call the deterministic models, and it just shows us one solution. So we're going to start with the Euro. And you can see where Erin is here off the coast of the Bahamas. And then that low that has kind of a medium chance for development is a little bit farther out here in the middle part of the Atlantic. And then you've got this other wave that's just coming off of the African coast over here, just to kind of get your bearings. So let's go ahead and advance it a little bit. And of course, you can see what happens with Erin. It squeezes there in between Bermuda and the Carolina coast. But look what happens down in the middle part of the Atlantic. Both of those lows kind of just disappear. So again, the Euro model just doesn't seem like it wants to do a whole lot with either one of these tropical waves. Maybe a little bit of a low that gets into the wake of Erin and works its way up toward New England, but even going all the way out over 300 hours, so we're going well beyond 10 days, the Euro just doesn't want to do a whole lot with everything that's out there in the middle part of the Atlantic. Of course, now this is the Euro that ran last night. We don't get the new one until later on today. So let's focus on the GFS, which has been a little bit more robust when it comes to developing any tropical systems. So again, let's get our bearings. Right now, what we're looking at here, this is Erin. This is that little wave that's in the middle part of the Atlantic that has a medium chance. And then you got what's coming off the African coast right now, which is 99L. So again, there's get your bearing on where everything is. So we watch Erin, again, very similar to what the Euro is, just kind of curves its way around Bermuda and heads out to sea. But let's roll it back a little bit. You see those two lows that are there in the middle part of the Atlantic. And again, just like the Euro, they just kind of disappear. Now, there looks like there might be some remnants of low pressure that's working across the central part of the Caribbean. So this is now taking us to August the 29th. So we're getting here toward the end of the month, and we're going beyond now that 10-day period. But the GFS has been trying to, at least for the last several runs, maybe getting one of those remnant waves to redevelop over the central part of the Caribbean, and then kind of make a drift off toward the northwest or the west. So on this particular one, you see that it kind of comes back a little bit by the Yucatan and then maybe stirs up and goes off toward the west. But again, that's way beyond that 10-day forecast. And even 10 days is really far out to make any kind of determination. So I will say that the GFS has slowly backed off a little bit more compared to what we were looking at during the day yesterday. And probably some of you saw some stuff on social media that had some pretty incredible solutions there when it came to the GFS. Let's switch over to the Canadian. Again, hopefully you got your bearings. There's Erin, and you can see those other two lows that are out in the middle of the Atlantic. But again, Erin swings its way around Bermuda. And if you focus your attention on the Atlantic and the Caribbean, you really don't see a whole lot developing, according to the Canadian here, over the next 10 days. So this goes out to 240 hours. So you got 10 days there. So again, it looks like it's trying to back off a little bit. Now, that doesn't mean things aren't going to change by tomorrow, but it is looking a little bit better that maybe maybe there won't be as much developing out there. Finally, we'll finish off with the Icon, and the Icon usually likes to develop just about every low that's out there, but it's got a little bit of a low from that wave that's in the middle part of the Atlantic there, maybe cruising north of Puerto Rico. But the secondary wave that's 99L doesn't really show up. Maybe a little bit of a wave over the central part of the Atlantic, or rather the Caribbean, by the time we get into about a week from today or so. But that doesn't seem too likely either, because that would move that low really, really fast across the Atlantic. That would be putting that wave moving about 25 knots or so, which is really, really quick for the central part of the Atlantic. So again, this is something we'll need to watch both of these waves. I wouldn't get super concerned about them yet, but just kind of keep up to date each day, especially during this part of the year, because a lot of stuff can just fire up, especially if you get something that whips up over parts of the Caribbean, which is part of the reason. That is one of the things that I am more nervous about, is having something either move into the Caribbean or perhaps develop in one of these particular areas here, because the water temperatures are just so incredibly warm there. And then the tropical cyclone heat potential, which is the measure of the hot water and how deep that goes. So as a tropical system moves over, it does churn up waters from below. And sometimes if those waters are colder, it can cool the surface of the ocean. And sometimes inhibit a developing tropical system. But when you look inside that brown circle there, south of Cuba, south of Hispaniola, southeastern part of the Gulf, right around the Bahamas, and even extending eastward out beyond the Windward Islands, you've got a lot of heat potential. So the hot water goes very, very deep below the surface. So as a system kind of rocks the waves around and starts to churn up some of that water from below, it's still churning up water that's above 80 degrees. And when that happens, it can sustain tropical systems or even help to strengthen them fairly quickly. And a lot of times when you have a developing system or even a tropical storm or hurricane that's already fully formed move across these areas, if you have just the right atmospheric conditions, let's say low wind shear, then at that time you can see rapid intensification. If you got just a category 1, it can go up to a category 4 or a 5 in nothing flat. Same thing if you've got just a tropical storm out there, it can whip up to a cat 3 in a matter of a couple of days. So anything that goes within that circle is definitely going to be needing to be watched. Unfortunately, most of our tropical development during the month of August does occur in the Atlantic, and sometimes those can sneak their way into the Caribbean and then squeeze their way in between the Yucatan Channel and get their way into the Gulf. I don't see that happening right now, but based on some of those earlier GFS models, you do have to be a little bit nervous. Fortunately, the Euro-tropical formation forecast between now and next Monday, so a week from yesterday, is showing virtually no action in the Caribbean nor in the Gulf. That's good news, but there are hints of tropical waves over the central and eastern part of the Atlantic. That dark purple that you're seeing there from the Bahamas scooting all the way out into the Atlantic, that's generally talking about Erin. We already know there's pretty much a 100% chance that there's going to be a tropical system passing in that area. So you kind of want to look at the areas from the Caribbean eastward over toward Africa. You got a few regions that are pushing up 60-70% chance that we would see something in that area between now and the early part of next week. That also follows along in the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook, which, by the way, we're going to get a new version of this later today. So this is week 2 and week 3, but by tomorrow, it's going to take us out just a little bit farther. But at least for next week and the following week, based on the Global Tropics Hazard Outlook from last week, things are expected to stay busy out in the Atlantic. And of course, that is pretty much on target because as we're halfway through the month of August, you see that things have already shot up almost double the amount of activity that we had just 2 weeks ago here at the beginning of the month. And then as we go into the early part of September, we're going to double the numbers that we are right now on average. So the peak of the hurricane season is just about a little over 3 weeks away. So we've got some busy times ahead. If you like Let's Talk Tropics, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. Remember, you can hear my forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And in between, if I got any updates, you can check out my social media pages, both on Facebook and X. And of course, thanks to everyone who has subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. Again, not a whole lot to worry about locally right now, but because it is the peak of the hurricane season, everything needs to be watched, and you should be prepared right now for anything that would come our way, or if we're in the crosshairs of any of those cones whenever they start to pop up across the Western Atlantic, the Caribbean, or parts of the Gulf of Mexico. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you on Acadiana Weather Today at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning right here on YouTube.